Good morning, sir. Today we are going to discuss about how to answer questions in the exam. So basically, in CA or CS or CMA, that may be foundation level or inter level, final level, professional or executive level. Especially in CA, CWCS, law paper, how to answer the questions in the law paper. First of all, how the questions are being asked in the exams. Questions are of three types in exam. One type of question is direct question. Other one is case law based question, that is practical question, sir. Third one is section based practical question. Section based practical question. So whenever you see law paper, that may be foundation or inter or final level, especially in CA course, if 10 questions are there no in the exam, out of 10, 4 questions will be practical question based on the case law, 4 questions will be based on the section based practical question. You may get 2 questions direct questions, but don't, for example in CA final, you may expect this kind of questions from the economic laws. For example, CA inter, you may expect this kind of questions from the small topics like membership, and CA foundation, you may expect this kind of questions from the partnership, sales of goods act, LLP. But generally this kind of questions are very rare, sir, direct questions. So most of the questions are case law based questions and also the section based questions. So how to answer this kind of questions in the exam, if it is a case law based, if it is a section based. For example, if it is a case law based question, case law based practical question. So how to write this kind of questions in the exam, sir? So what is the meaning of case law based practical question? In the present exam, the question will be similar to previous judgments of the court of law. Present question is similar to the previous judgment of the court of law. So whatever judgment is there, no previous judgment, he will give the same judgment in the question, he will change the names. He will change the names as X and Y. The same question he will ask in the exam, sir. This question will be related to previous judgment of court of law. So how to answer this kind of questions in the exam? So we have to answer this kind of questions in 3 steps. First, step number 1, we should write the provision of law and also landmark case law name. Landmark case law name. So here we have to explain the provision and also we have to explain the decided landmark case law facts. In step number 2, we have to write the facts of present case. Facts of present case, that is, we have to explain the question in your own words. So here you are informing to examiner that, my dear examiner, I know the law. I know the law. Here you are informing to examiner that, my dear examiner, I understood my client problem. So whenever you see this kind of practical questions, no, the last wording in the question will be advise the client as a legal advisor. Advise the client as a legal advisor. So here you are informing to examiner that examiner, I know the law. Here you are informing that examiner, I understood my client problem. In step number 3, what we have to write? Next step will be decision. Next step will be decision. Next step will be decision. Here you have to conclude. So as in the step number 1 we have explained what is law. In step number 2 we have explained what is the client problem. So as per step number 1 it is supposed to be like this, but he is doing like this. So this is the judgment. So this is the judgment. So you will not lose any marks. Even if you see the answer sheet, even if you see the suggested answer of ICI, he may not classifying like this, step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, but if you closely observe the answer, no, he will give the same thing in the suggested answer also. He may not divide like step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, but in the suggested answers also, he is somewhere he will explain the section or case law, then he will explain what was happened in the question, then he will give the decision or conclusion. So this is how you have to answer the questions in the exam. So let me explain you one question practically. Let me take one previous exam question. For example, sir, let us take this courseless question. This question was asked in June 2009. If an assessee was a wealthy man earning huge income by way of interest and dividend, he formed 3 private companies and agreed with each to hold block of investment as a pretended loan. This way, F divided the income into 3 parts in a bid to reduce his tax liability. Decide. Sir, what is the meaning of decide? Examiner treating you as a qualified CA into practice. Decide for what purpose? These 3 companies were established. So this is the question number 1 in the exam question again. So for what purpose these questions are formed? This is the first question in the exam. Next, whether legal personality of the company should be disregarded. This is the second question in the same question. Here 2 questions are there, sir. First question, decide for what purpose companies are established. Second question, whether we have to lift the corporate will or not. So how to answer this kind of question in the exam? Let us see, sir. For example, step number 1, I wrote provision of law. Step number 1, first of all, this question related to corporate will, sir. What is the meaning of corporate will? Company and members who form it are treated as separate and distinct from each other. The concept of separate legal entity is not also known as the corporate personality. Then what is the meaning of lifting of corporate will? As long as company acting lawfully and legally, the concept of corporate will be respected. However, if any promoter director trying to take the unfair advantage over the will, then the will be lifted. They will see the person behind the scene, behind the will, by treating company and the defaulting person both are one and the same. That is the meaning of lifting of corporate will. So on lifting of corporate will, there was a famous case law was there, sir. That is Dinshaw Manikji Petit. Dinshaw was a wealthy millionaire enjoying large profits and income in the form of interest and dividend. So from its investors, he formed 4 private companies along with his servants, divided the property into 4 parts and transferred them to newly formed companies. If you observe, same point was there in the question also, sir. These companies do not have any business nor assets other than the investments. These private companies received all the income and returned it to Dinshaw in the form of pretended loan. Dinshaw received all the money, refused to pay taxes. In the question also, same point is there, sir. So it was held that D and 4 companies formed are one and the same. So this is all step number 1, sir. So in step number 1, I am explaining the provision of the law, that is what is corporate will, when to lift the corporate will. So I gave the related case law facts also, sir. Next, analysis of the given case. F is a getting income in the form of interest and dividend. F formed three imaginary companies. The main purpose of these three imaginary companies is to avoid the payment of taxes. So, sir, whatever F is done, no, the same thing was done by Dinsha also practically. Decision. F and three companies formed by him were one and the same because they were formed only to enable him to avoid the taxes. Therefore, income earned by all these private companies are treated as the income of the assessee, that is F itself. Hence, legal personality of the three companies should be disregarded. So, in the see here one question is there, sir. Decide for what purpose companies are established. Decide for what purposes companies were established. I answered it. So, these companies were F and these three companies formed by him were only to avoid the payment of taxes. I have answered it. One more question is there in the question. Whether legal personality is to be disregarded. Yes, legal personality of three companies is disregarded by treating F and the companies both are one and the same. Clear, Nana? So, this is how you have to answer the case law based questions. So, step number 1, we are writing the provision of law and also case law, landmark case law. In step number 2, we should write the what you have understood in the questions. Don't copy paste it. Write in your own words. What is the intention of the examiner? Next, in step number 3, you have to write the decision. For example, sir, if it is a section based question, how to answer section based question? Similar. Step number 1, section based practical question. Step number 1, provision of law. Here you are informing to examiner that, my dear examiner, I know the law. So, we have to explain the fact, we have to explain the provision of law here. Step number 2, we have to explain the facts of present case. We have to explain the facts here. And in last step, step number 3, you have to write the decision or conclusion. So, what is the difference between the previous one and this one? In the previous one, we are writing the section and also the case law, landmark case law also, previous one. But here we are writing only sections, because it is related to only section based practical question. Here we are writing only section. There we used to write both section and also the case law also, sir. Next, in the decision, we have to conclude. Sir, in the decision, what you have to write, this one is important. Whatever he is asking in the question, that is what you have to write here. Don't write what you know. So, at the end of the question, he will ask the purpose of the framing of the question. Here you should write the purpose of the framing of the question. So, for that question, you have to answer directly. Clear, Nana? In every question, at the end, he will ask the intention of the examiner. You have to write the answer for the intention of the examiner in step number 3. Let us take one practical question. For example, let us take this question, sir. For example, let us take this one. UMC Limited has only 7 shareholders having fully paid up shares. On 30th April 2009, all the shares of X are sold to Y in an auction by the order of court of law. Z, a shareholder, was in the USA trip from January, thus he was not aware of developments. The company continues to carry on its business thereafter. In December 2009, the company borrows a sum of 5 lakhs from Unique Bank. Later, the company was wound up and the assets of the company were not sufficient for the payment of the liabilities. The bank filed a suit against the Y and Z for recovery of the said loan. Decide, see, it is important, sir. From here it is important. Decide the liabilities of X and Y. Question number 1. Again, one more question is there. would your answer be same if the loan was taken in the month of the March 2009 instead of the December 2009? Here two questions are there, sir. Decide the liabilities of X and Y. One question. Would your answer be same if the loan was taken in the month of March instead of December 2009? So how to answer this kind of question, sir? Even it is related to lifting of corporate will, reduction of number of members below statutory minimum. So step number 1, I am writing provision of the law. What is corporate will, when to lift the corporate will, and I am writing the main provision, reduction of number of members below statutory minimum. After expiry of the, if the number of members reduced below 7 or 6 if the number of members reduced below statutory minimum, after expiry of the 6 months, existing members who have the knowledge of the default will be personally liable. That is provision of law. That's what I wrote here. See what was happened in the question. In the given case, UMC Limited has only 7 shareholders having fully paid up shares. On 30th April 2009, all the shares of X are sold to Y in an auction. So number of members reduced to 6 only. Z was in USA trip from January to January. Thus he was not aware of the developments. So the company continues to carry on its business. In December 2009, company borrowed the 5 lakhs rupees from the Unique Bank. That was happened in the question, sir. Next, decision. See here, I am dividing two parts. Decision also. If loan was taken in the month of December 2009, so we have to lift the corporate will. So existing members who has knowledge of the default will be personally liable, that is X and Y, but Z is not liable because it is ignorant. Again, one more question is there in the exam. That is, if the loan was taken in the month of March 2009, at that time corporate will was there. So who is liable, sir? Company will be liable. So in step number 3, we should divide the answer in the so many paragraphs. So if he is given the 3 questions in the exam, no, we have to divide into 3 paragraphs. In the same question is giving only 2 questions, divide it into 2 paragraphs. So this is how you have to answer the questions in the exam, sir. So basically questions are 3 types. Again I am telling you, one is direct questions, other one is case law based questions, other one is section based practical questions, sir. So it is better not to expect direct questions in the exam. You may get on 20% this kind of questions. Next, case law based questions will be there and practical based questions will be there. So I hope this video will be useful to you. Have a great time. Enjoy the day.